There's a war being waged against you right now, and you probably don't even realize it. It's not fought with bullets or bombs. It's being fought in your food, your habits, and even in your mind. The enemy doesn't want to kill you outright. They just want you weak, passive, and obedient, and they know exactly how to do it. Testosterone levels in men have plummeted by over 50% in the last few decades. That's not just a health crisis, it's a civilization crisis. Weak men don't lead. Weak men don't fight. Weak men don't stand for anything. And I hate to break it to you, but that's exactly the point. You could argue about where that's coming from and who's perpetrating it, but the thing is that it's real, and it's on purpose, and it's intentional, but there is something that you can do about it. For most of human history, men were strong because they had to be. We fought wars. We built nations. We hunted, we worked, and we conquered. We had high testosterone because our environment demanded it from us. We weren't sitting at desks all day, staring at screens, eating processed garbage. We were out in the world, struggling, suffering, and growing stronger for it. Contrast that with today, where men are softer, we're weaker, and we're more passive than ever. And society praises that in us. They ask us more and more every single day to be more feminine, more like women, but that's not the case. The world wants us to be men. I've covered this several times. The world really wants us to be men, and the world needs us to be men. We've been told that our aggression is dangerous and that our masculinity is toxic. That's a lie. And it's a lie that they want you to believe. They told us that we need to get in touch with our feelings. And while I don't disagree that that's part of, we do need to get in touch with our feelings some. But we also need to be that aggressive, that drive. We also need to push. And sometimes we need to put those feelings behind us. We need to say this to our feelings and just get shit done. The result is that we have a generation of lost, aimless men who are physically weak, emotionally fragile, and spiritually dead. But there's a truth that they don't want you to know, that we need to know, that we need to realize, is that you don't have to be one of them. In this episode, we're going to break down some of the reasons why testosterone is plummeting and how it's affecting your body and your mind and your habits. We'll talk about the traps they set to keep you weak. We're especially going to hit on the porn epidemic that affects literally millions of people. Most importantly, we're going to hit some very important steps, the exact steps you need to take to reclaim your masculinity, raise your testosterone, and step into the role that you were meant to be as a man. So let's start with why this matters. Average testosterone levels have dropped 50%, approximately 1% a year since around 1980. So that's about a 50% decrease. You think that's going to have an effect on behavior? Absolutely 100%. Studies show that a 65-year-old man just 20 years ago had the same testosterone levels as a man in their 20s today. Sperm counts are dropping. Fertility rates are tanking. We're running out of enough people. They tell you that there's too many people, but the truth is that we're starting to get to the point where we're not even replacing ourselves, which could be catastrophic for society. Also, another important thing about testosterone levels, not just for our health, but it affects the quality of our leadership, who we are as men, who we're supposed to be. Testosterone is about drive. Testosterone is about helping us to make decisions and to leave our feelings behind and make the best choices for our families, for our people, for our countries, for our societies. Low T men are more passive, more anxious, and more likely to comply, which actually in turn makes them more risky because they're gonna feel when the pressure is on them, it's going to push them and they're going to feel like they're being backed into a corner. And what does an animal do when it's backed into a corner? It acts aggressively. So low testosterone, in the long run, low testosterone actually makes more dangerous men. Low testosterone also affects political ideology. Multiple studies show that men with higher testosterone levels tend to vote more and more conservative. They did a study a while back where they took two groups of men who were politically kind of right in the middle. They weren't extreme on the right and they weren't extreme on the left. They were just kind of in the middle. And they broke them into two groups. So they took these two groups and they checked their testosterone levels. And they took one and they supplemented them with testosterone and tested their levels and watched it go up. And they gave the other group a placebo and watched their levels stay consistent. And guess what happened? The men whose testosterone levels rose started to choose more and more conservative values, lean more and more towards family values. That's science. Men with higher testosterone levels tend to swing conservative. You think it's not intentional? You think they don't do that on purpose? The men on the other side are going to tend to want to be more compliant. Compliance is one of the side effects of low testosterone. They're going to follow the status quo. They're going to listen to everything that people are telling them. Politically, sociologically, whatever it is. It's very apparent. You can look at today's modern men. I talked about this in a previous episode. 100 years ago, 18-year-olds, even 50, 60 years ago, 18-year-olds were rushing off to war. They would lie on their army applications, tell them that they were older than they were just so they could go to war. Nowadays, 18-year-olds consider it adulting if they can just frickin' pay their bills and do their laundry. That's the basics, men. That's the stuff that everybody should do. So if you compare 18-year-olds rushing off to war versus 18-year-olds who have trouble getting their laundry done, I think you can see a pretty stark contrast. In the Bible, 1 Corinthians 16:13 says, "Be watchful, stand firm in the faith, act like men, be strong." I'm going to get into that a little bit more later. But the Bible literally tells us to act like men, and one of those things is to be strong. I talked about King Ahab in a recent episode. King Ahab was what I would consider to be a very typical low T man. So low T men tend to be low muscle mass. They tend to kind of be passive aggressive. Maybe they have man boobs, right? They're just kind of gelatinous. That's how I picture someone like King Ahab, who was dominated by Queen Jezebel. And we all know how that turned out. Ahab died, the country wandered away from God, and Jezebel ended up eventually getting thrown off the roof. And then we have King David. King David was considered to be a man after God's own heart. I can't imagine what David's testosterone levels was. He literally killed a giant. He went off to war. Yeah, he made some mistakes. I'm not making justification for any of those things. But there's no way he was low T. David was a warrior king who led his people, fought giants, and ruled with strength. While Ahab was weak, he let Jezebel take over and brought destruction to Israel. One of the biggest things right now, these days, that is contributing to testosterone levels is pornography. I've had my struggles. I'm not going to lie about it. I'm not going to pretend like it didn't happen. But by God's grace, that's under control. And I can literally feel myself. The longer and longer I go without porn, my brain becomes clear. My thoughts become focused. I feel dialed in because my brain isn't being constantly bombarded with those thoughts and those images. Porn is one of the biggest enemies that they use against us. Porn puts inside of men this constant sense of shame, because when we're dealing with that, when we're fighting with that, when we're struggling with that, that is always back here whispering in our ear, telling us that we're not men because we're struggling with this. It's constantly telling us that we're failing. It's constantly telling us that we're not worthy, which is going to make us not want to step up. It's going to make us want to sit back, because no one would want to lead someone like that. Porn wrecks testosterone in our brain, especially high-speed pornography, where we're constantly being bombarded with images. And it's not just like you go out and you buy a magazine and you look at it. It's just like we can constantly go back and forth. It is overloading our dopamine sensors in our brain. Just like drugs, when you take drugs, opiates, methamphetamines, all these different things, eventually the body develops an adaptation to where it requires more of that drug. and harder and harder and harder doses. The same goes with porn. You start with a little bit, and then you got to go more, and then you got to go more, and then you got to get more extreme, and then you got to have all this stuff. You're constantly being bombarded, and it actually leads to something they call PIED, porn-induced erectile dysfunction, to where men develop a physiological condition that they have a hard time getting and maintaining an erection without watching pornography. And even with watching pornography, it becomes difficult. It becomes almost impossible for some of these men to have sex with with a woman in real life without watching porn, because all they see is those images. Like they've created this ideal fantasy world, and they've constantly bombarded their brain to feel like they need that. The more porn you watch, the less drive you have to pursue real goals and real women. It lowers testosterone, destroys motivation, and weakens your masculinity. So cut it off. So what do we do when we're struggling with that? What do we do? Yeah, we think it's harmless. It's just porn. It's just everybody does it. Truth is, it is wrecking you. Cut it off for 30 days and just see how it affects your testosterone. See how it affects your mood. See how it affects your focus and your relationships. Find some other men that you can relate to about it. That's what it took for me. I had to find a bunch of guys who held me accountable for it. If you guys are listening, thank you. Replace it with real life challenges. Fitness, competition, meaningful goals. You'd be surprised at how much bandwidth porn takes up in your brain. So now that we've talked about this decrease in testosterone and how we've gotten here and the danger that it causes us and the overall impact that it does, how do we regain our testosterone? Well, that goes back to 1 Corinthians 16:13. Be watchful, stand firm in the faith, act like men, be strong. The thing about rebuilding your testosterone is that one of the best ways to rebuild testosterone is to act like a man. The science shows that when you do manly things, those are literally the things that increase testosterone. Back in the 70s, they did a study involving schizophrenics. My dad used to talk about this all the time, where they took a group of actual schizophrenics and they tested certain blood markers. Okay, then they took a bunch of paid professional actors and they checked their blood levels, drastically different than the schizophrenics. Then they told the paid actors to follow the same behavior and act like schizophrenics. And guess what happened? Their blood markers literally changed to be similar to the schizophrenics. So all their tests, they now tested out as being schizophrenic, according to the physiology. The same applies to testosterone. So now that we've discussed that acting like a man, like it says in 1 Corinthians 16:13, be watchful, stand firm in the faith, act like men, and be strong, what does that actually look like? Well, number one, lift heavy weights. Go to the gym. And by that, bicep curls, cable curls, abdominal exercises, all that stuff, that's great. And do them. But the thing that really boosts the testosterone the most and builds the most strength is lifting heavy weights with barbells. I'm talking squats, I'm talking deadlifts, I'm talking bench press. They've shown that squats, especially heavy squats, are the number one exercise that you can do to boost testosterone and build muscle, followed by deadlifts, and bench press is right up there too. Number two, eat like a man. Eat plenty of protein, and that includes red meat, eggs, dairy. And don't avoid the fat. A lot of people, you shouldn't eat fatty food. Well, your body literally takes the cholesterol that's in fatty meats, and that's what the precursor to make your hormones. So if you're not getting enough of that, your hormone levels can tank. Number three, get outside. Do something hard. Get out in the elements. If it's raining, if it's cold, if it's hot, if it's high altitude, whatever it is, push yourself to your limits. That's going to boost your testosterone levels. Number four, stop porn. Stop the cheap dopamine hits that come with porn, that come with scrolling on your phone, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all of that stuff. All that cheap dopamine is actually going to end up suppressing your testosterone in the long run. Number 5 is that there are a few supplements that you can take that will help you with your testosterone levels. But you have to remember that if you're not doing those first 4 things, that all these supplements aren't going to actually make that big a deal in the long run. But if you're already doing those other things and you want to give yourself a little bit more of a boost, try some of these supplements. Vitamin D3, 5,000 units a day, helps with testosterone production. Magnesium glycinate, 400 milligrams a day, helps balance your hormones. Zinc, 30 milligrams a day, helps your body stop converting testosterone to estrogen. Creatine monohydrate, 5 milligrams helps to support creatine monohydrate, helps to support muscle mass and mental clarity. Those are the big ones. D3, magnesium citrate, zinc, and creatine. Boron, 10 milligrams can also be helpful. There's an herb out there called Tonkat Ali, 200 to 400 milligrams a day. Ashwagandha, another one that can help, 600 milligrams a day. But remember, focus on those first big 4. Number 6, find your tribe. Surround yourself with strong men. They say that you are the sum total of the 5 people you spend the most time around. So if you're spending your time around a bunch of low-T men, you're going to follow their habits and you're going to end up being like them. So find some other men that you would see as these are high testosterone men. Spend your time around them, follow their habits, and your testosterone will naturally go up. Number 7, lead your family. Lead your life. Don't be passive. Leading increases testosterone. All right, so I know I said a lot, but let's focus on the first 4, and that is to lift heavy weights, squats, deadlifts, bench press. Eat plenty of protein, including red meat. Avoid soy. Get outside. Get some sunshine. Do hard things. Stop porn and stop the cheap dopamine. Then once you've got that under control, talk about some of those supplements. Find your tribe and lead your family. This war on testosterone, this is a war on you. The war on testosterone is a war on me, and it's a war on you because they want us weak. They want you docile. They want you compliant. They want you to sit down, shut up, and comply. The solution isn't complicated. Stand up, get strong, act like a man. If you're done playing weak, comment testosterone down below and I'll reach out to you personally. If you're a woman and you're watching this and you know a man who could use it, share it with him. If that's your dad, share it with him. If it's your brother, share it with him. If it's your boyfriend, if it's your husband, share it with him. If it's your son, share it with him. The world, especially men, need to hear this.
So if you like this content, please give it a rating, a review, and share it with your friends. Also, if you'd like to learn a little bit more about me and what I'm all about and what I can maybe do for you, check out my website at thedangerousgentleman.org. That's thedangerousgentleman.org. Thank you for listening.